So we're back, folks, and again, we are entering into our moderation of STI information and presentation we just had, and the moderator is Jeff Taylor.
Thank you. So I know a couple people had to leave. Simon Collins from iBase had a lot to say about this, and he gave me a few talking points. But I thought we'd start in the room, and please come up and talk into the microphone, and I'll try to remember to do that as well, so everybody can hear online. So who wants to go first? Don't all raise your hands at once. Is there anybody online who had a question or comment about the ATI session we had earlier? Oh, hello, Mike, come on up.
All right, I have a question about informed consent of children under the age of consent, and especially considering, I don't know if this is right.
Yeah, you just have to talk right into it.
Especially considering that there might be like more severe long-term consequences, something like this. Like I'm imagining being a child with HIV who's struggling with adherence and then finding out that I was put on this study where I was discontinued, and like how would I be able if I didn't get an opportunity to kind of select that? So I'm just kind of curious like how that informed consent process works for lifetime survivors.
Thanks. Me or Krista, would either of you like to speak to that? Not to put you on the spot, but come on up.
I don't recall all the details, but I do remember that for children there is generally when you do research in children, you have to get assent, particularly for children below the ages between 7 and 17, you have to give assent to participate in these studies. That is separate from the consent that is provided by the parent or guardian, and that's what is also strongly recommended in these guidelines. Assent, and don't recall what other issues that we discussed. Maybe somebody else was in the downtown. Do you remember more details on that? How to do the children?
That was under the age of 7.
For the 7 to 17-year-old is where I recall that there is an issue of assent. I don't think that for children under 7 there's a requirement for assent because they're too young to give assent, but the guardians have to give consent for them to participate in the study. Yeah, that's my recollection of what the recommendations say, but I'll have to check the details of what the pediatric group. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
I have a question to Dr. Bill. If I gave you 105 days of treatment, is she the highest in the study?
The one who has how many days of API?
Yeah.
She's on 857 days off of ART.
She's the highest.
She's the highest, and the lowest still on is 437 days of the ones that are post-trial. So they were on ATI or had not restarted at the end of the trial, which was at 55 weeks of ATI, and they've continued on. And remember, the trial first participant was more than 2 years ago. So it's between 437 days and 850. What I said the first time.
857.
I have a second question for you. No, nobody is that. Just want to know how you handle this situation. You're telling me that the hospital is really very, very exciting. But that moment when you call me to tell me that things have gone wrong and you need to get back to treatment, there is an element of psychosocial need. I mean, how do you handle that situation? Because a person like me really want to get off my treatment. And when you take me off treatment, I don't expect you to call me back, put me back on treatment, at least for like 5 to 10 years. So what happens when you call me like after 6 months and say no, things have gone wrong? Do you have plans to handle me? Because I might become a different person.
So this is one of the important reasons that Cindy mentioned that we should have a protocol in place before the trial ends, so we can roll participants over who want to continue off of their therapy. Of course, once they get off the trial, they may want to just restart therapy if they're not going to be closely monitored. So to have that opportunity to have a protocol that they can jump right onto, and with that monitoring is the provision of psychosocial support. Because once something goes wrong, as you say, the horse is out of the barn. You should be providing that kind of support and decision making. For example, imagine a young woman who's 23 years old, whose partner now wants to have a child, and she's on ATI. Once she becomes pregnant, she's going to want to restart. So, you balance that like, yeah, this is great, I'm off treatment, but I want a baby. So, I don't think anybody would support, entering the ATI in this case. But anyway, yes, you need to have something in place for sure for the participants, and that includes support.
And while you're here, another question. So, you designed your study long before this consensus workshop. So I'm interested to know, and maybe Kareem may have left, but what was kind of your thought process in designing this and taking those things into consideration before you have, the advantage of that local, African consensus statement to guide you?
So Fresh was designed kind of as a patient-centered study, but this was our first year trial. And so we really learned as we went, and I can really give a nod to Corinne that she was on the ground before we had funding or the protocol approved. Mm-hmm. She was already there like, it's coming, let's get ready. So we were already doing that ahead of time. So those nitty-gritty decisions were made fast and furious as we were waiting for the trial to get approved, because we knew darn well that once it got approved, they're going to go barreling ahead with or without us. Right. So we had to hurry up and get our IRB approvals in place. So when first trial, first drug, we were already ready and we could do an in-depth interview with them before they even started a trial drug. Mm-hmm. So it was race or else to get ready and figure those things out. We learned them from participants. At least we were wise enough to know we didn't know, and that we need to ask participants to find those things out. So it was by luck and courage.
I just wanted to add quickly that I think one of the unsung heroes for our cohort in the Fresh study that we're doing is our community advisory board. Because, as you say, when we started thinking about the trial, the guidelines were not there, and the community advisory board had to go through a lot of landing in a very short piece of time for them to have a discussion about this study that was oncoming and whether they will support the study and how the study should be designed. And they played a key role in advising us. And the disclosure issue was a big, for example, in our setting, whether participants should be required to disclose their status. And we had to do a lot of
disclose to who? To partners.
To partners. And so this was a lot of back and forth with the community advisory board as well. So that the community advisory board certainly helped a lot in terms of guiding us in terms of how we designed the study before the guidelines came available.
Dr. Tunde, quick one, sorry, Dr. Tunde. Recent I've heard that combining the model influence in antibiotics, combining with PNABs, you are likely to get better results than when you using one PNAB in this kind of situation. And if you're using one, you have planned to create another cohort for the two PNABs or three PNABs. And the last question, in African settings, ladies differ in the way the body is now region. and I see only girls from South Africa. You have plans to see girls from my region, maybe they have better responses.
Yeah, so the question was how many ENAPs did we use in our study? We used 2 ENAPs.
Oh, use two, not one. Okay.
And our criteria was that, in the beginning, was that a person had to be sensitive. The virus had to be sensitive to both protein neutralizing antibodies. We changed that because we couldn't meet the recruitment criteria, because it turned out that a lot of people are not sensitive to both protein neutralizing antibodies. And yeah, so that's the way the study kind of evolved. But in terms of what the study does, I think for me, this study is really just the beginning of showing that we can actually do this kind of study in Africa. I think that a lot more work needs to be done now going forward to roll out this kind of study. Perhaps with better products than we used in our study, because there are limitations, a lot of limitations to what we used and how we did the study. But certainly to do a much better study in terms of the products in other parts of Africa, because it's not just South Africa. But I think we need to make sure that the sites have the capacity to be able to do this kind of study. These kind of studies are very intense, they are very time consuming, and we don't want to get it wrong for sure. Because if we get it wrong, the community will have a very negative reaction to this. So I agree that these studies need to be rolled out in other parts in Africa. That should be the intention, but it should be done very carefully, and we should keep learning from what is being done so that we can design much better studies going forward.
Thank you. Don, that's a good question.
Yeah, can I speak from here or do I?
Sure, we can repeat it. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is really kind of a question to the group and to those of you who've been completely entrenched in both the ATI consensus work, but also more broadly in cure research, which is where is the conversation on having an either ATI and or cure kind of alumni registry, like a place where we can kind of follow people's experience over time, very much like the antiretroviral pregnancy registry where you can report outcomes and things like that. I feel like that there have been enough people who have participated over time in various forms of ATIs or in cure research. There's, I think, a desire by most participants to kind of know what to do down the road, know what else is happening, be able to track that information, even if it's just a mechanism for us to query processes before designing new studies. I think that there's some real value in not using that in a one-off kind of thing. So I'm wondering if there's been any kind of collective move towards developing that type of registry opportunity.
So let me see if I can summarize that. Don Avery was asking if there's a post ATI or cure study registry or some other mechanism where we can follow people over time and take advantage of their experience. And do you think we would consult with them as well and serve as an ad hoc advisory board?
Potentially people can opt. I mean, all of it would be optional.
Right.
Certainly people could say, I'm willing to be contacted if they're willing to, say 5 years out, the following thing has happened and there will be updates. I just think that there's a wealth of information that just kind of floats out the other side and nobody knows who to follow up with or go back to, and we shouldn't lose that.
Right. So the whole idea is to take advantage of that experience and not lose it, and just kind of cut them loose afterwards and then continue to follow them over time. So I guess that's a to-be question.
No, I think it's just a comment that I think that's really important going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And we really should think about large that maybe both sides that can be funded. I don't know whether by someone like NIH with what's going on. I don't know who will fund it, but some kind of study that will have a long-term follow-up. Because the problem, I think, it's a lot of the studies that have been done are very small size studies. So I think there's a lot to be learned from long-term follow-up on individuals in one common purpose. certainly know their colleagues thinking about it. I think the question is how to find it. But
Yeah.
I think it's important.
So to summarize for the folks online, Dr. Toomey was saying that, yeah, we do need that. And the question is how to organize that, who's going to fund it over time, and especially given that the NIH may not be willing to do that in the near term. Whether you agree is it's very important. Bridget, can you come up and so I'm not paraphrasing everybody.
I'll cut
Get your
down on
steps
your
in,
work.
girl.
I was gonna make you repeat.
I was just gonna say, it doesn't have to be super complicated as like NIH research or something like that. It can just be something like the pregnancy registry,
Mhm.
where folks voluntarily, I mean, it costs nothing to put up the website and have the information available. So it's a simple way to track it.
So it'd be done by the participants themselves and or their providers?
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the room? Yeah, are you able to come up and, okay, thank you. I don't want to be responsible for mistranslating.
Okay. Well, let's get it. Hi, let's get it straight. I only speak one language, and that's English. Hi.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am the one and the only unapologetically Black Miss Billy Cooper, trans woman, and I've been living with HIV before it had a name, before it was the gay men's plague and grid. So all y'all in this room got a long way to catch up with me. Because my lived and life experience far outweighs all your certificates and your diplomas and your whatever you got hanging on your wall. There needs to be more time invested in us instead of people telling us, listening to us and hearing what I've been going through since the 80s. I was May the 15th, I will be officially diagnosed 40 years living with HIV. I was diagnosed May the 15th, 1985. But that is not the day I contracted this virus. So I probably done had this, if not from 80 to the day I was diagnosed, probably in the 70s. I'm going to say this, and you can look at me side eye, or you can frown, and you can do whatever you need to do. But I was there when Black people weren't getting adequate care, when we were not getting care. It was a gay man's disease. That's what they said. But my sisters and brothers were dying right down the street. 6th and Howard, 6th and Mission, 6th and Market, Tenderloin, Soma. So they were dying. And I had cancer. I have 2 forms of cancer. I have squamous cell and squamous cell carcinoma. They had to take my eye out in 2009. I was diagnosed with it in 2004. And I'm sure it has relations to cancer. And I also have anal cancer. So I wish some of you scientific people would really talk about how cancer and HIV walks hand in hand. Because there's too many of us, I'll talk to you in a minute. It's too many of us coming down with cancer. So I just want to say, we have had some advancements in HIV, but when is the cure coming? They spend billions and billions of dollars keeping us sick. They make more money off of HIV giving us the medicine. I'm so toxic and so inflammable, and what's that other word they say? What's that begin with a C? They say we have in our body. What's that? No, what is it with inflammation? Begin with I. I'm sorry.
Inflammation.
Inflammation. I got so much of that in my body. It's a shame. But I probably got off the track. What were you talking about? What were you talking about?
Treatment interruptions and how.
Oh, treatment. I don't believe in treatment interruption because as I stand here in front of all you beautiful people, I took AZT for a year back in 1985, 86. I'm one of the lucky ones to be alive today. Because why would they give us a cancer drug in the beginning if they don't want to admit how HIV and cancer goes hand in hand for all these decades. But I never took a drug holiday. I didn't like that because I was scared I would die. Because in the beginning, I was when we were all queens, Sonny, before we became trannies and transgenders. Back in those days, I was a numbers queen. My T cells would not go over 350. And I was so worried, honey. I worried my doctor sick, honey. But then, like right now, my T cells are 900. So I'm doing good. I'm thriving and surviving, living with HIV. And if you want to get in touch with me, everybody knows me. Yes. Thank you. Any more questions?
So we're at time, but before we go, Michael, I saw put something in the chat. Michael, is there anything you want to share? Is anybody online who has a question they want to ask before we end?
Not that I see, but does anyone have anything?
You mentioned something about the Rio study.
Oh yeah, that was just Richard was writing about Tom Villa and a bunch of other people advocated for this type of long-term follow-up cohort for people, and I was just letting Richard know that Simon earlier today said that the Rio trial was going to have some sort of cohort formed. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be the type of cohort we would like to see, but it was a start. So I was just chiming in with that.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for your participation in this session. Richard, did you have anything now?
AZT was never a cancer drug. We can have a conversation about that later.
What is that about AZT?
It's been reported, particularly by AIDS denialists. They love to claim that AZT was a cancer drug, and it never was. It was tested in mice against cancer, and it was completely inactive.
But
it didn't do anything.
I'm only saying what they told us
Sure.
back then, because we were marginalized, oppressed, we were underserved, we were overlooked, we were forgotten people living with this virus, and we didn't have we were not knowledgeable about the science you speak about.
Sure.
We were stuck in this area of San Francisco, so that's why I'm saying what I was told.
Sure.
And I mean, but it goes back to fact. Why so many people living with HIV come down with cancers? It has to be some kind of correlation. It has to be.
It is. You know, when your immune deficiency is associated with cancer risk. The only reason that particular thing bothers me is just because at one time it was really used to try and discourage people from getting into care, and so as treatments did get better, then it kind of served as a barrier. And there were people that really, you know, Peter Duesberg, that were really trying to stop people from going into care and said that kind of stuff. And so that's the only reason that's stuff.
And also, people don't talk about how HPV is associated with cancer and HIV.
Sure.
Because we also come down with that. And when when we go through the symptoms and the initial treatment and the diagnosis, that makes us lose our mind.
Thank you for mentioning HPV, because San Francisco is where Joel Pilevsky, thank you. Looking at Michael Peluso. Joel Pilevsky did the anchor study that proved that screening, saw that connection. And if anybody's interested, the AIDS Malignancy Consortium continues to study HIV and cancer, and they have an advisory board, so look them up.
And I think the START study explains concern.
Oh, right.
The concern. Because the answer that question, the START study from the insight.
Yeah, Moses shared that the START study was the first one to prove that connection. Yeah, right. When people went off treatment and developed higher rates of cancer. So thank you. This has been a very vigorous and robust discussion. We thank you, and send it over to Mr. Derrick.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Billy.
We're not over yet, are we?
No, we are not over yet.